Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Yeah.
You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show till Mets do us part. John from Brooklyn, Gibby reps NJ. With the other team, I don't care what your friends say. Mets fans, we focus like a sensei. Listen to the podcast Monday, Wednesday. Made a couple bad plays, but we still won. Character, yup, we're gonna build some. Are you gonna check the pod? Is real fun. Just like Mookie, I will, son. So invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show.
Available now on all streaming platforms. If you love the New York Mets, check out Till Mets Do Us Part. Enough rapping. Let's get to yapping.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Til Mets Do Us Part. We're live on YouTube, live on Twitter, like we are each and every single week, usually coming to you guys 5:30 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays. Here this week, 5:30 p.m. or thereabouts on a Monday. Why? Because Wednesday is Christmas Day. Also, next week, Wednesday will be New Year's Day. So I think we're going to go 2 days earlier. So Monday this week, Monday next week, before we return to our regularly scheduled time. It is Christmas Eve. That means it is a Festivus for the rest of us, like my co-host is proudly representing. Anyway, John Saponaro out here in Burbank, California, where there is no snow. It is sunny. It is warm. I played softball yesterday. It was wonderful. But that means my co-host, Matt Ibanez, needs that sweater that looks great on him, but probably much more because it is cold, it is snowy, it is Christmassy. But before we get into that, Ibby, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, John. Thank you so much for asking. Of course, always jealous of the fact that you get to play 3 softball games in the beautiful December weather of California while I'm here dropping my kids off at school in the morning at 11 degrees. Based off the thing on my car. Very gross, very gross. But either way, excited nonetheless. We got 100 people in the room already, and I expect that number to keep climbing because, as always, our New York Mets are in the news, and we had some stuff drop at 2:00 in the morning today that we're going to talk about, that we're all very excited about. We got some other rumblings and things that are being said, some things we're going to try to decipher when it comes to all that. But of course, we also have, it's the season of giving. It's the season.
Yes, it is.
It's the season of giving, and here us over at Til Mets Do Us Part are going to be giving away this fantastic signed Edwin Diaz baseball. I'm in the midst right now of writing down the names, putting into a generator for a wheel spin at some point during the show. So people that do show up, I want to see you in the comments because that means, it lets me know that you're here. And then you would register as a participant within the show. So if you're on the Twitter side, head on over to the YouTube side. And in order to get into the comments, you got to sub the channel. So that's the whole thing. We are so close already to 1,100 subs. We cleared 1,000. We already got almost 100 more. We're trying to keep on building that. So if you want to enter, you got to make sure that you sub the channel so you can actually put a comment into the chat itself. So it will register that you are in the giveaway. But other than that, it's Wednesday.
It is
the red
light's
light's on. No, it's Monday. It's Monday, and the red light's on. I'm even more excited because now we're starting the week with it. Monday, the red light's on. Let's have some fun.
Shout out to everybody in the chat, by the way, Mr. Nobody, PB, Patty and NYC, Stephanie, we got Jeff Cohen, we got Keith, the Media Goon himself, we got Charlie, we got Rosie, I'm trying not to miss anybody, we got Maureen, we have Aunt Rivera, Subway to Shay, scrolling, trying to look, Armand is here, Douglas Barnes is here, Brad is here, starring a lot of comments, by the way, right out of the gate, because there's a lot of good stuff coming through. We got Corey as well, and like you said, Ibby, I'm sure that number is going to continue to climb. Before we get into the Mets side of things, obviously the big news, Sean Manaea coming back to the Mets on a 3-year, $75 million contract that includes some deferrals. Let's talk quickly about the giveaway, because you mentioned you're going to get people into the wheel as they pop in and try to make sure that we get as many of these folks out here for the possible giveaway as possible. We talked about it last week. It's very difficult when you're going off of YouTube subscribers to make sure that every single person is represented, because a lot of people have private accounts, so they may subscribe, but there's no way for you to find out all of that information. So we decided this was the best course of action, is to get people who are in the live chat, who have to be subscribers in order to engage in the live chat. So we figured for the first time ever, although we've done some giveaways in the past, let's do a giveaway live on the show that we'll do towards the end. How do you feel about that, man? That is uncharted territory for us, going with the live giveaway.
I mean, I'm excited because I've always wanted to try something like this, and I was messing around with some stuff last night, and I found something that works when it comes to the wheel, and I have a very fitting color scheme for that wheel, which we'll show towards the end. But I really wanted to do a duck race because I thought those were always fun, but the only one I could find was, limited to a certain extent of numbers. So I didn't want to pigeonhole us in case that we had more than the allotted numbers that were allowed within that given app. So we're going with the wheel spin. I think it's going to work out well. And, like I said, as people continue to roll in, I'll keep punching the names in, and we'll see who's going to be the lucky one to walk away with this certified JSA Edwin Diaz signed baseball.
Absolutely. And we've got a newcomer to the chat. I don't know if they're going to love an Edwin Diaz autographed baseball because they are not a Mets fan, but they are certainly welcome. It is Jeffrey saying, hello, everyone. I'm a Boston Red Sox fan. Hopefully it is all right. It is absolutely all right.
Absolutely,
I do love
man.
when we get fans of other teams in the chat, which has happened a lot over the last couple of weeks, because sometimes we can bounce stuff off of them. Last week we spent a lot of time talking about what a potential Mets Luis Castillo deal would look like with the Mariners. And we had a Mariners fan here in the chat, and he or she, they were able to give their opinions on, what a deal would look like, because look, everybody's a little biased. We try not to be, but you and I are Mets fans. We have this platform. Everybody who's here in the comments, they give great insight, great opinions, great comments, great questions, great trade proposals, all of that stuff. But they're also mostly Mets fans. So it's nice to hear from the other side of things. Shout out to the Boston Red Sox. Went out and got Garrett Crochet, signed Walker Buehler to a 1-year deal. I think those are some good moves. And it's nice to see the Red Sox ownership trying to get back into the mix. But I say all that to say welcome, Jeffrey, to the show. Thanks for joining us. As far as all the other folks go, we've got Stephanie saying, you got to know I'm happy about the return of the tribal chief. She's been banging that drum all off-season long, so we know that she is super pumped up about that. Mr. Nobody saying, is it possible we get Alonso and Bregman under the tree? Jeff Cohen just saying, give us Met fans Pete Alonso. Brad throwing out an option for a deal. That's something that I've thought about over the last week or so. Pete, with a 3-year deal with an opt-out after 1 year. I don't know if it's trending that way anymore after the last 24 to 36 hours, but I think that's a good as concept as any. Ibby, I think maybe you do like higher AAV. We can talk about this later, like $30 million a year for 3 years with an opt-out after 1, maybe even an opt-out after the first 2 that allow him to kind of do his thing. But we'll talk about that later on. Mr. Nobody also saying, yes, it is the return of the Tarsh. The Tarsh that is Til Tarsh Do Us part. It is a lovely moment. But let's talk about Sean Manaea. 3 years, $75 million deal to come back to the Mets. It takes you from his 33 to his age 36 season. There is money deferred, according to Will Salmon, who's been a guest on this show, does a great job covering the Mets over at The Athletic. $23.25 million in total. That'll be equal payments of a little under $2.5 million per year from 2035 to 2044. So a long time from now. And Will Salmon also in that same report, Ibby, said that the Mets seem confident about their rotation outside of their pursuit, obviously, of Sasaki at this point. Obviously, a lot of things can change, but your initial thought on the tribal chief, we acknowledge him, returning to our New York Mets on what I would call a team-friendly, below market value deal.
I was very excited because I let you know before that I just got a new phone and my notifications and everything weren't really all up to date because I'm still trying to get used to all of it. So I woke up this morning like, not a care in the world, just doing my thing. And then eventually I looked towards my phone, like, and I saw our group chat and I was like, oh my God, what the hell happened? And then I'm seeing people talking at like 2:00 in the morning, which everyone was still up. I was sound asleep at that point. Seeing that Manaea is back, but I'm very excited for a lot of reasons because number one, the whole team aspect, what he was able to bring to the table when it came to the clubhouse. And, we saw things that, once they signed Frankie Montas and how Montas and Manaea were good friends. And, Montas leaned on Manaea when it came to saying like, is this a place I should go if I want to get things right? Can they take care of me? And Manaea, putting the team over. And then obviously the hope of him coming back. We always wondered about the deal. And I tried, believe me, I tried because for once I wanted to pat myself on the back when it came to what we talked about at the beginning of the offseason when I said this guy will run here to sign for 3 years and $70 million. And I had said that, I kept banging that drum. And, the market was dictating elsewhere. Like it was thinking like, if Severino got 67, that means Manaea might push for 90. And now we're thinking like 4, maybe 5 years and all this stuff. He comes here. 3 years, $75 million. We talked about 25 a year. It's a huge coup for this team. It's a huge win. And, just having some stability. I'm not going to backtrack the things I said before about some worries when it comes to the workload, but I love the fact that this team already, I know they said that there might be, a pause, if you will, but I'm excited that this team is already rolling 9 deep when it comes to starters at the major league level. And then we're talking about some guys that could make a difference in the minors, that being Sproat or Tidwell. I'm not going to include Tong in that just yet, but Sproat, Tidwell, maybe Nolan McLean. So now you're looking at 9, 10, 11, like 12 guys already with more room to spare. And then they're still going to be in the Sasaki sweepstakes, which we'll find out, by mid-January if they're going to be the winners or losers in that. And then we'll see how the market, falls if anyone else is, making sense to fit in for this team. But all in all, I think it's fantastic that he's back from a clubhouse perspective to keep one of your own. And something that David Stearns said a lot of last year, which was we want guys that want to be here, but also guys that have proven that they can pitch in New York or play in New York. And he showed that in spades. They believe in that second half that he had. And I think we're all excited as Mets fans that he is going to be back pitching for this team with Juan Soto, with Francisco Lindor, and this new look Mets that we have moving forward post OMG.
And let's not forget that some of the guys you mentioned on the major league team, you got to commit to some of them to be a starter or not, but they have swing man value potential as well. And that's the likes of the newly acquired Griffin Canning, which is why you can't get all mad that the Mets go out and sign a guy like that for depth, because he can be a spot starter. He can be a guy in the bullpen. He can be somebody who maybe is in your rotation if you can unlock a bit more. And I know he does not have a pretty ERA. He is not a great pitcher by any stretch, but he's also making about $4.25 million, which means, like Adrian Hauser the year before, you can simply let him go if it doesn't work. But then there's also Jose Buto, who can be a starter or a reliever. You've got Tyler McGill, who I know a lot of people are sick of the Tyler McGill experience as a starting pitcher, but he's another guy who could be a starter or a reliever. And then you have guys like Paul Blackburn, who's been a starter, for pretty much his entire career, but he can factor in the bullpen, long man, something like that as well. So what David Stearns is doing, is doing what David Stearns does, which is building a deep, versatile pitching staff in the rotation, in the bullpen. The bullpen still has some work to be done, but the relief pitcher market outside of a guy here or there has not really materialized as of yet. So I think the Mets are kind of in the mix with some of these bigger guys. Will they pay big money for Tanner Scott? I have no idea. Should they pay big money for Tanner Scott? Honestly, I'm not 100% sure, but I think the Mets are in the mix. Ryan Stanek is still out there, did a good job for us, especially down the stretch. I know he had some bumps along the way, but there are pieces that they can plug into the bullpen later on. As far as Manaea goes, I love the deal as it is constituted. You and I talked a lot on this show about what the Mets should do with Manaea and expressed our apprehensions about what a Manaea deal might look like. We talked about, gun to your head. Would you go to a 4th year? God, gun to your head. Would you go to a 5th year if you had to get it done? Because it looked like that's where this deal was trending. And I'm going to pull up this comment from Aunt Rivera saying, nothing matters anymore. Gary Sheffield Jr. hated the deal. He has the final say, of course, being tongue-in-cheek about it. And then we've got the Miserable Mets podcast, who interacted with me and Gary Sheffield Jr. about 10 minutes before we went live, saying, what about him thinking it's a bad signing and saying it makes little to no sense? Ha, 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 ha. Ibby, that's where I think the issue is for me. Look, Gary Sheffield Jr. doesn't need us to give him play, but I'll bring him up by name because we did just have the interaction. Look, he's a Yankees fan. His father played for the Yankees, probably for the bulk of his fandom, or when his fandom really got solidified. He is a content creator. He is a podcaster. To say that the deal makes little to no sense when the deal is team friendly, when the deal is below market value, is, I think, foolhardy. I think that is a Yankee fan being a Yankee homer. Ibby, if the Mets sign Manaea to a 5-year contract, I could see you expressing apprehension, nervousness, worry about where this deal might go. Sean Manaea will be 33 years old in February. If you signed him off of his best year, after he changed his delivery mid-season, while also pitching the most innings he's ever pitched in his career after a couple of ineffective and injury-plagued years, I could see why signing him till he's 38, 39 years old would give you cause for concern, or at the very least give you pause and say this is not a deal that makes sense to you. But when you look at where the starting pitching market was going, when you look at Luis Severino getting basically this same exact deal that Manaea got, despite the fact that Manaea was a better pitcher in their 1-year deal here each with the Mets, because when you factor in deferrals, it gets to right in range of what Severino signed with the now Sacramento, now no home attached to their name, Athletics. So to say this deal makes little to no sense when both parties wanted to get this deal done, and Manaea clearly took a very team-friendly deal to come back, and David Stearns played this market masterfully to get him to come back. To me, that's where I call nonsense on the whole thing from Gary Sheffield Jr. And that's where, again, my apprehension, and the only reason why I bring him up at all, not just because it happened 10 minutes before we went live between he and I, but also because, Ibby, again, I expressed some of those same concerns. Was it a fluke? Do you worry about the age? Do you worry about the arm angle? Do you worry about the injury history? Do you worry about the non-pitching these innings history? Yeah, you do. Over a 5-year deal. Over a 3-year deal, when the guy pitched his heart, soul, blood, sweat, tears for this team, I don't think you can afford to worry about it. He wanted to be back. The Mets wanted him back. The Mets wanted him back at their number and their terms, and he basically agreed to all of them. So why would you say this deal makes little to no sense? To me, this is an absolute win for the New York Mets franchise. It's an absolute win for David Stearns, who continues to be one of the brightest, if not the brightest GM/Pobos in all of Major League Baseball. And it's a win for Sean Manaea, who gets paid $25 million a year as a starter to come back and be at the top of this New York Mets rotation, which now goes from looking like, ooh, not so great, to pretty damn good when you couple it with the offense and the addition to Juan Soto. So again, not trying to give this dude more play than he needs or wants or whatever, but I just think that to say this deal makes little to no sense, like Miserable Mets podcast pointed out that he said, to me, that's where you lose me. Not at 3 years, $25 million per.
Yeah, I don't need to talk about, the son of Gary Sheffield. I feel like I feel like a lot of people just have this apprehension to just give respect to the Mets, or anything that goes with the Mets. It's either bad or it's questionable, and it's this inability to shake what people have established, this team is supposed to be in terms of media for, the previous 10, 20, 30, the 40 years, the existence of this franchise, whatever it may be. And it's just as if Soto just wants the money. He doesn't see anything in the Mets at all. He just took the cash and he doesn't care about them. Or Manaea is bad. He's not good. Why didn't they sign Walker Buehler instead? It's like, did you watch last season? Like, I know Buehler was a guy that I mentioned as a target because of the lack of a qualifying offer that I thought made sense.
Listen, I would have taken Buehler, but I don't think Buehler is the guy you take instead of Manaea.
I think the only way that would have got to that point is if he wanted 4 or 5 years and Boras pushed for it. That'd be a different story. But to sit there and say that, Walker, like when I read the comment, I felt as though it was pushing this idea that, how Walker Buehler was in, to close out the World Series is who he's been for the previous 2 years. And that's not who he's been. We haven't seen the best of Walker Buehler in almost 4 years. And I think that, especially coming off of the second half that Manaea had, you can't sit there and tell me that Buehler is better, because what Manaea did was put this team on his back and acted as an ace and got them as far as he did, just as much as anyone else did for this team, the Lindors and, whoever else you want to name on this club. So, Manaea deserves that respect, and to just, poo-poo it or be like, nah, it's a dumb sign. It's like, that shows me that, for an arguably a Hall of Famer's son, you don't know ball. I'm sorry, you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, and that's the thing too. Like he said to me, like, oh, the way you talk to people, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, listen, man, I know that sometimes I'm abrasive. I tell it like it is. I'm sarcastic. I'm tongue in cheek. I used to do stand up. I'm from New York. Like, I'm going to bring it to you. Don't talk to me about, oh, you're being disrespectful because of who my father is. Like, dude, then don't say clown stuff. Like, it is what it is. Anyway, this is not the Til Mets Do Us part, guys. Rail on Gary Sheffield Jr. hour.
No, I don't need
we have plenty of more things to talk about as it relates to the players on the field in what has been now, Ibby, I think at this point, it's not done yet, a very, very, very good off season for our New York Mets. Let's jump back into the comments here. Miserable Mets podcast saying another intangible about Manaea is his clubhouse presence. You can't put a price on that. Yes, and his ability to perform in New York. Somebody else put that on Twitter, I think under the comment between myself and Gary Sheffield Jr. You can't put a price on being able to perform in this city, in those high leverage moments, in the postseason. The list goes on and on. So yeah, the clubhouse presence, the intangibles, I think all of that stuff matters. Armand with a good one, saying on or after January 15th, the Mets are going to add another starting pitcher, either Roki Sasaki or someone else. I think the Mets might, Ibby, slow play this for the next 2 weeks or so, 3 weeks, I guess, and see where the Sasaki market goes. I could see the Mets getting back into the starting pitching market in earnest if they don't land a guy like Sasaki. Now, again, not maybe at the top end of the rotation, but I think they might bring in another piece depending on who's out there. Maybe it makes them revisit a Luis Castillo trade. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Maybe it is top end. Maybe it's closer to the bottom, but I think this is a good observation from Armand here saying, maybe they play it a bit slower at the moment to kind of let this thing play out a little bit with Sasaki. Not that he's going to cost them a ton of money, but somebody that they don't want to bog down another rotation spot for right away, even though Sasaki might start in the minor leagues.
Yeah, I was talking with Armand about this before, and I was saying to him that I think, yes, that Sasaki is obviously the target now, and they're going to keep on doing things to improve, to better sell themselves. And if they get him, great, fantastic. I think that's their focus. But like what I said before, they're going off of this depth now, at least 9 deep. You can call it 12 if you want to include the kids that might provide something this year. Like you said, it depends on the market. If something happens around the 15th to the end of January, if something happens where someone's still out there and they want to attack it, and we can talk about money and how they're going to spend it moving forward, I think it's offense. But could things change if they only sign one bat and Corbin Burns is still hanging out there at the end of January? Would things change? Yes, things could potentially change then. But until we get there, we're not going to know. So it's really going to be dictated based off of who's there and exactly, how much is it going to cost in terms of not only because of dollars, but because of, where they would slot in for this team. I think Burns would be interesting if he's still out there. I don't think he's going to be, but if he is, that changes the math on a lot of things, but it's also dependent on if they choose to sign not one, but two, high-end offensive players before then.
Which I think is definitely possible at this point. And I think what you said is spot on, where the focus has now shifted with regards to the starting pitching versus the offensive side. Look, they're going to have to get something done more than likely with Pete Alonso. And if it's not Pete Alonso, maybe they pivot to Bregman. We'll pivot to that conversation coming up in just a little bit. But I think you're right that their focus now needs to be firmly on the offensive side of things. The Mets have a good offensive team. They have the makings of a great offensive team if they add to it. And I know it's hard to say that to some people when you just spent $750 million on the best offensive player, not only on the market this year, but of the past several years in terms of what Juan Soto can do to reshape a lineup. Yes, he does make them better than they were last year, but with the potential loss of Pete Alonso, or at least the loss of Pete Alonso to this point, the uncertainty of what you do with Mark Vientos, and also hoping, I think he will, but hoping that he not only reproduces what he did last year, but builds off of that, and the hope that Francisco Alvarez takes another step forward, or maybe to a lesser extent, Luis Angel Acuna. What do you get out of some of these other players who are on the back nine of their career, like Jeff McNeil, if he's still on the team, or Starling Marte, if he's still on the team? Do you get a bit of a resurgence from Brandon Nimmo, who had, I think by his standards, a down year, or at the very least an odd year? I think you're looking... Yeah, I think a down year is maybe a little unfair. I think an odd year for him is kind of more the way that I would label it, if we just have to attach some kind of label to it. So I think the focus now becomes offense, offense, offense. Let's jump back into the comments here, because we've got a few that kind of bounce all over here. Carlos Ortiz saying, do you think Sasaki will start in the minors? I think it's just really depends on when whichever organization gets their hands on him, Ibby, decides what to do with him. I think it's a 50-50 chance at best. I know that doesn't really say a lot, but I think it's organizational specific in terms of what they have in the starting rotation and what they think they need out of him. I think it's a coin flip that Sasaki starts in the minors. What do you think?
I think it's really dependent on who gets him and what the overall plan is in terms of innings and what they want to monitor and what they think is best for him to be successful. Because look, I think it's overstated that, about the whole where he plays in terms of media. Maybe not, but I think wherever he does end up, they might slow play it. And if that means, hey, we're going to give you a start in single A and then double A, and then maybe he's up within the first month of the season anyway. Like, I'm not sure. Like, I think it really depends on the place. Like, as an example, if he ends up in LA with the Dodgers, is there a rush to get him into the starting rotation? Probably not. They could probably slow play and allow him to get accustomed to everything, and then finally, unleash him when they think it is proper. Like, there's no rush on that, because they have a good rotation as it is, barring injuries and health in general. If he goes to San Diego, would they have to? Technically, I don't think they would have to right away. If he goes to a place like Chicago, if he ended up there, maybe, because of the idea and the spectacle of him being there. It's a big sign. He can bring in a whole new market, like everything like that. So I think it's really dependent on that.
Also, if I may, if he comes to the Mets, people poo-poo things like the Griffin Canning contract. And people were, talking shit to me on Twitter and on Blue Sky about it. Like, oh, well, can't they just aim higher? Can't they do better? This guy's a bad pitcher for his career. But nothing exists in a vacuum. I'm not saying that it's the type of deal you should get excited about. Quite the opposite. Actually, you should not get excited about it, because not every deal, Ibby, is something that you're supposed to get excited about. But if signing the likes of a Griffin Canning to a 1-year deal for $4 million allows you to start Roki Sasaki in the minor leagues for 2 or 3 months because your organization thinks that that's what he needs to adjust, isn't that a net positive? And I know it's not just about him. Like, oh, could you just give those starts to Tyler McGill or whatever? Sure. But again, the Mets are planning on rolling out a 6-man rotation for the bulk of the regular season. You need more bodies. It has been proven statistically that most teams need 10 to 12 pitchers to get through a regular season in modern baseball. Well, if you're trying to throw out a 6-man rotation for the bulk of the year, you might have to look at 12 being more of the norm than the 10. So more bodies are not a problem. And if it's going to help you in some roundabout way, give Sasaki the kind of deal that you're looking to give him, or give him the kind of soft landing that you're willing to give him, where you say, yeah, maybe you start in the minors for a month, maybe it's 2 months, maybe it's 3 months, whatever. I think none of these deals are bad, and I think all of these deals make sense. We'll jump back into the comments here for a lot of good stuff. We got, I'm going to just say Biffer saying, if you send me a Gary Sheffield sign ball, I will lose my shit. Best I can do is Gary Sheffield Jr. It's just the best I can do as far as all this is concerned. Speaking of that guy, last couple comments coming in from a few folks about our interaction with him, or my interaction with him. Rosie saying it's all about Soto, Ibby. They don't think the Mets are worthy of Soto, that is Yankee fans, and they're really angry about losing him. I think that's true. Nick R over on Twitter saying, I agree. If the Yankees signed him to the same deal that's Manaea, they'd be doing cartwheels. I think all of that is very true. I think there's just a bit of a bitterness. I think there's a Yankee bias. I think you said it before when you were kind of going off on just how other people in the media, specifically people who are tied with the Yankees, view it. I think Nick R is spot on. I think Rosie is spot on. Ibby, couple things here from Mike saying the question is, are the Mets still in on an ace besides Sasaki, who again, potentially maybe according to Joe DeMayo last week or 2 weeks ago said, you can make an argument he has the best stuff in the world adjusted for what he's able to do at his age. Do you think the Mets are still heavily involved with a Luis Castillo, or do you think that they allow this market to just fully play out at this point? Like you mentioned Burns, you mentioned shifting the focus to the offense. I agree with you on all of those fronts. Do you think a guy like Castillo plays into that narrative, or do you think Castillo, because it's a trade, because it's a little bit more complicated, is something that the Mets might be in on in the back burner throughout the rest of this offseason regardless?
Where I'm going right now, where my brain is, and just trying to read tea leaves and everything, I'm going with the idea that David Stearns thinks that this depth and the volume that he has at the moment is enough to put pitching on the back burner until Sasaki is decided. Once that happens, he'll reassess the market. But I really think that the plan right now is offense, like big time offense. This team has money to spend still. They have holes to fill on the offensive side, whether you want to talk about the corner infield positions, whether it's third, first, second, if you want to talk about second base and how things can work from a defensive alignment, if you want to talk about DH, whatever you want to talk about, there's a way that this team can still improve, and they need to score runs, which is why when you assemble a team like David Stearns has to this point, when it comes to a volume approach for pitching, depth when it comes to pitching, how do you support pitchers like that? And guys, you're trying to rehab at the same time, you got to score runs. So I'm telling you, the money moving forward, in my opinion, is going to be focused on offense. Could something fall into their lap? Potentially. But do I think that their focus is on pitching outside of Sasaki choosing them? I don't think it is right now. And when it comes to a Luis Castillo, as much as I want him, as much as I would love to have him on this team, and I still think it would fit perfectly. My approach right now on December the 23rd, on this Festivus Day, I'm saying that the Mets are going to hold the prospects right now. They're going to hold the prospects, and they're going to assess things going into the deadline before they actually move them. Now, can something come along that's too good to pass up? Could something minor happen where they get a reliever? Sure. But I'm talking about the bigger names. I don't think someone's moving unless something is really presented to them like, oh my God, we have to do this. I'm going under the assumption that they're going to hold the guys. They're going to let them reestablish value because they all had down years from injury. And then they're going to approach the deadline saying, we got a full cupboard here of things to work with and things to offer. Where do we need to improve this team? And then further build for a bigger push. That's where I am today. Could that change tomorrow? Sure, it could. But that's where I am right now and how I think that they're going to go about constructing things.
You guys are watching Til Mets Do Us Part live on YouTube, live on Twitter, like we are each and every single week, although this week, coming to you live at a different day. Of course, our normal recording day is Wednesdays, and this Wednesday is Christmas Day. Next Wednesday will be New Year's Day. So this week, coming to you live on Monday at 5:30, or at least the start time, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Next week, if you want to set your calendars, but the best way to do it is not even to set your calendars, just subscribe and turn notifications on. YouTube will let you know when we're going live. But next week, it will be at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or thereabouts on Monday as well. So keep that in mind. Yeah, Jeff Cohen nailing it, saying 5:30-ish. You know, listen,
We're trying, man.
lives. We got things we got to do. Sometimes Ibby and I have to talk about things before we go live. Things happen. It is what it is, but we want to let everybody know the next this week and next week we're going to be doing Mondays because we're not trying to bog down anybody's holiday. Happy holidays, though, by the way, to each and every single one of you, whether you're celebrating Christmas, whether you're celebrating Kwanzaa, whether you're celebrating Hanukkah, whether you're celebrating Festivus, whether you're celebrating nothing at all. I said it last week, Ibby. It's so important this time of year. So many industries come to a complete standstill. So take the time to relax by yourself, with your family, with your friends, with your cat, with your dog. I don't care what you do. Go on a solo vacation. You should be taking this time, unless you have an odd job like the one that I used to have that takes you to weird places and you have to travel during the holidays and stuff like that. I understand that not everybody has the luxury of being off during this time of year, but a lot of people do. And you should take a little bit of time to exhale and just relax, because life gets crazy, life gets hectic. But anyway, back to the Mets conversation. Ibby, Ryan Finkelstein said something similar when he was on with me to close out the winter meetings about a week ago. He said, look, I think it's more likely, and my approach would be to bring back Sean Manaea, because it's just a money deal and you could save your prospects for the middle of the season. If the Mets need an ace, the Mets have the prospects to go out and get an ace. And the way things are trending right now, and look, things could change. Some team, Baltimore, could step up, throw a bunch of prospects at Seattle, and they can get Luis Castillo right now while we're recording. But right now, Luis Castillo hasn't moved. And Seattle should probably move him, but they don't have to move him. And so the way things stand right now, it'd be if Seattle goes into the season with Luis Castillo still on their team, the Mets do have the prospects and the player capital to make a move at or before the deadline to acquire an ace pitcher. They might be set. So that's why I agree with what you're saying, where right now the focus needs to be on the offensive side of the ball. The focus needs to be, okay, we've got enough players, we've got enough bodies. Maybe that changes if Sasaki goes elsewhere, and we could revisit that mid-January as we head towards February and the start of spring training. But for right now, I agree with you. I think the Mets' focus should be on the offense. And that brings us to one Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso's market quickly shrinking, almost non-existent, dare I say. Look, there's a couple teams out there that could spend money on Pete Alonso, right? You've got a guy like, or you've got a team like the Washington Nationals. They could jump in on Pete Alonso. Carson, shout out to Carson. He's been in the comments a lot during the show. We haven't pulled up any of his stuff, but been a guest on the show, does a great Mets podcast, the Mets Weekly show. Ibby, he pointed it out on Twitter the other day. He said there's basically a handful of teams right now who do not have a viable first baseman. The Mets, of course, look, if you want to talk about moving Vientos, whatever, fine. But the Mets don't have a viable first base option under contract. You've got the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Miami Marlins, the Oakland team, or the Athletics team, and Washington. Pete Alonso is not going to the Athletics. The Pittsburgh Pirates and the Miami Marlins are not going to pay Pete Alonso. Could I see the Washington Nationals coming up with a deal for Pete Alonso? Maybe. But Ibby, I know that's a team that's on the rise right now, but that is a team that, if everything breaks right, is what? A fourth place team in the division at best, looking up at the Mets, the Braves, and the Phillies. And if you're Pete Alonso, are you going to take a couple of bucks more to go down the turnpike and play with a team that maybe is on the rise, but you're going to leave a team that just went to the NLCS, a team that you've known your whole career, that also, since you went to the NLCS, added Juan Soto? You're going to go do that to go play For the Washington Nationals, I don't see it, man. I don't see it. I think it's Pete Alonso and the Mets. I think it's all but a guarantee. It's just a matter of when.
You watched how feverishly this first base market went, and all it took was one domino. And once the Yanks, once Walker signs, and then Goldschmidt goes, and then everything just followed suit. And then Naylor comes off the board with the trade, and then Lowe comes off with the trade.
Yeah, by the way, I forgot about
everything happen
for Lowe. People are saying in the comments, I forgot Washington traded for Lowe. Yeah, so many things. So, Washington is pretty much out on that too. Thank you guys. Shout out to you guys for that.
Yeah. So just seeing all that happen, and I'm watching this guy's market just disappear. And that's why I put out the tweet yesterday, like, I think you're bluffing, Pete. I think you're bluffing, Scott. Like, I don't think anything is truly there. Like, and everyone's like, oh, well, Texas got rid of Lowe. Maybe they're going to sign Alonso. Like, no, they're not going to do that because they signed Peterson to now be their DH. Now they can move Jake Berger from third to first base. So that, like, there's no reason for the Mets to really bet against themselves or bid against themselves, because I don't think there's anybody left. I don't think the Giants are going to do it. I think the Giants are more focused on Corbin Burns right now, if that's the route that they want to go. Plus, they have Bryce Eldridge, who's knocking on the door, who's their top prospect, who's going to play first base. So I don't think it's the Giants. I do not buy the Cubs either, Brad. I think you're a first timer, Brad. This is a different Brad. I think you're a first timer here. Welcome, but I don't think the Cubs either, because they're trying to shed money. That's why they got rid of Cody Bellinger. They bring in Tucker to potentially get into an extension, but now they're also trying to get rid of Seiya Suzuki because they're trying to cut more money. And the guy says, I'm not a DH, I want to play the outfield, but they won't let him play the outfield. So there's a lot going on with the Cubs, and I don't buy them either as a person that's going to spend big on Pete Alonso. I don't.
It's also, we always talk about in free agency, you can't force a person to sign with you, right? We talked about it with Yamamoto last year with the Mets. Does Pete want to go to the Cubs? Now, I understand money talks, but we don't really know what the Cubs are doing. The Cubs are adding, but they're subtracting. And if you're the Cubs and you're talking about shedding payroll, why would you sign a flawed player like Cody Bellinger to a pretty favorable deal, then trade him? He's on a short-term deal. You trade him to the Yankees to get rid of his money so that you could sign Pete Alonso, who's also a flawed player, albeit flawed differently than Bellinger, to a longer-term deal. Like, I don't understand why you would go that route. Look, it's weird, but I just don't see it, Ibby. And then look, this one from Corey. Isn't Seattle interested in Pete? If we traded for Castillo right now, would that help them free up money to go after Pete? I could be wrong. I think it could potentially, but I think sign Pete first and then trade for Castillo.
But also, like, there was something that was put out last night talking about how the sad nature. I think it might have been Jay Hay Kid over at Baseball is Dead. I think he put out a little blurb that said, Seattle. Like, it just came across so sad that, Seattle offered a 2-year deal or a 1-year deal with an option to Carlos Santana because of the money situation that they have. And it's just like, and then Santana was like, no, thanks. I'm going to go back to Cleveland. So it's like, that's the sad state of affairs of Seattle. It's like everyone penciled Seattle as a person that could potentially go after Pete, but does he make sense there? 1,000%. But they don't want to spend the money. They don't want to put the cash out. And the market has come crashing down. And if it comes crashing down, I don't think Pete's going to leave to go elsewhere. I think he'd rather just go back to the place that he's been successful and take the money that's offered to him. Maybe that's where the standstill is right now. Maybe it's haggling over that year, that extra year that he definitely wants. If it's come down from a 4-year deal or a 5-year deal or 6-year deal to a 4 or 5-year deal, like, maybe, I'm telling you, the battle right now for Pete is for years. He wants the years because he doesn't want to end up like Paul Goldschmidt searching for 1-year deals when he's 36 years old. He wants to be locked in, but the problem is he's not going to get it. This market has gone away. There's no one that's going to bid up the Mets. And I also think that people are afraid to get into a potential bidding war with the Mets over this player. So I just think that it's a matter of time, unless there's something going on behind the scenes that we just are not privy to, that he's just going to spite the Mets and take something lesser to go elsewhere. But I don't think that's the case. And I think, in short order, whether it's before the year is up, I think Pete's going to be back. I do.
I do too. I'm going to bring back this comment from Brad because I kind of talked about it briefly when we started the show, saying Pete, 3 years with an opt-out after 1, and I added maybe an opt-out after 2 as well. Give him a higher AAV, but over a shorter span, right? Give him something that he wouldn't get, $30 million a year over 3 years. So 3 years, $90 million with an opt-out after 1 and maybe even an opt-out after 2. And the reason why I bring this back up now, Ibby, is because I think you're absolutely right about the security. And I think this is a great comment from Brad because I had kicked this around myself. I may have tweeted it. I don't remember if I did. But over the last week, I was thinking about this as a potential type of deal for Pete. But I no longer think it's viable for everything that you just said. What I think is more likely is something like the Carlos Correa deal that he signed with the Twins. I know it's a different scenario because with the Carlos Correa deal, those options all had to do with injuries and things like that, where he has a chronic condition with his ankle. Pete is incredibly durable, Ibby. He has been over the course of his career, but people are worried about the way he is going to age. People are worried about the way his body type will sustain. And I've said to people, I don't know why you would, other than the fact that he's not sculpted like a Greek statue. Pete has been incredibly durable. He's only had fluke injuries where he gets hit and gets hurt and things like that. So I'm not sure why you'd be more worried about his body breaking down, other than the fact that you're basically sitting here fat shaming a player. But my question to you is, and then I'll give you the last thought on it and we'll head into the break. We'll come back. We'll continue this conversation about Pete and some other stuff. But do you think if people's concerns with Pete are his long-term viability as a player, that maybe Pete takes a deal akin to the Carlos Correa contract? I don't mean for the money. Obviously, Pete's not getting, $312 million or whatever that contract can possibly go up to. I just mean in terms of, hey, here's some high AAV for 3 or 4 years. After that, you hit this benchmark in terms of health or production, you get another $25 million year that vests automatically. You hit this other benchmark, you get another $20 million year that vests automatically. Scott Boras is Carlos Correa's agent. Scott Boras is also Pete Alonso's agent. Now, I don't think it's fair for Pete to necessarily sign that deal, but that may be the best deal that gives him big money short term and some kind of long-term guarantee where if you just keep being healthy and being the type of player that you've been, you get that longer-term deal. I think that might be an avenue to go because Correa's deal, the benchmarks do decrease over the years. So when he's 35, the benchmark is not the same as, when he's 32. And I think you would do the same for Pete. It's like, hey, if you hit 40 home runs in your 4th year, that 5th year triggers. But then, as you get into the latter stages of your career, maybe you don't have to hit 40, maybe you have to hit 35 or 32. And then that next year will trigger. I think that that's something that they could entertain. I don't know if Pete will do it, but I don't know, man. That's looking attractive as opposed to the opt-outs, which I don't think he wants to do.
And I don't think the Mets want opt-outs either when it comes to, I said this last week, where I don't think they want to do this dance again. Like I think that you're either locking in or you're not. And I think that's where this back and forth could potentially be going. Because originally I thought it would be more like a Bellinger deal, 3 years opt-outs each year. But the more I thought about it, I was like, I don't think the Mets want to do this again. I don't. I think they want to just figure it out, and then you're here or you're not. Like it's one way or the other. I think that I'm with you with what you're saying. But I really think that what can close this deal comes down to, because he's missing out on the years, can you placate that and play up to him and say, look, we're not going to give you the years, but what we're going to do is we're going to construct this contract where we're going to give you a very nice signing bonus. So when you play this year, you're essentially going to be making, X amount of money over during this first year, or even over the first 2 years of this deal. We're going to give you 4 years, but we're going to give you it at this clip of whatever. So it's not as much against the luxury tax or whatever, but you're going to make the signing bonus as well. So you're going to walk with a lot of good money in your pocket, and you're going to be here for the next 4 years. Is that going to be enough for him? I think that that's what the offer is going to end up being, because I think that they're fine playing that game of a signing bonus like they were when it came to Juan Soto. So I think that, if they gave Pete and they said, look, we're going to give you a $30 million signing bonus on top of the 25 you're going to make a year. Like, does that mean he'll be playing for 55, like something crazy along those lines? Like, the Mets could do that if they wanted to, and I think that's the route they're going to go. They're going to go because I don't think David Stearns wants to be locked in for 5-6 years, and I think that's what Pete wants. So I understand where you're coming from with the idea of how you can structure the deal, but I think that we might be more towards that end, at least for me. And another idea potentially would be like if you want to base it off of like a chase for X amount of home runs. If you're betting on yourself, Pete, in terms of home runs at this point, okay, do you think in 4 years' time for your career you're going to have at least 380 home runs? Because if you do, if you're at 380, guess what? Your 5th year can vest, and then you can be with us when you try to break 400 home runs for your career. Like something along those lines. Like, I mean, that's potential too.
And look, I don't want to muddy the waters when I bring up the Correa thing, because it is hard for players to agree to those kinds of contracts. And that's why I said it was unfair to Pete, because Pete has been the picture of health in his career. Correa has not. And Correa also has an injury that caused 2 teams, including the Mets, to back out of a long-term deal with him because of fear that it would be degenerative. So I don't think it's fair, but the reason why I bring it up is because of the people involved. Steve Cohen, now close with Scott Boras. Scott Boras, the agent for both Correa and Alonso, in addition to Sean Manaea and Juan Soto and other big free agents, blah, blah, blah. So I just think there's a path maybe where that makes sense. The type of escalators that you bring up also make sense. Hey, when you're hitting these home runs, you get to this threshold. That's great. You get to this threshold where Pete can bank on his health. See, with Correa, it gives the Twins the ability to get out of the deal if he's not healthy. The flip side for the Mets and Pete would be it allows Pete to bet on the fact that he has been healthy to get the kind of deal that he wants. I think what you've outlined is possible. I think what I've outlined is possible, but I will say a bit more unlikely than what you said, because I just don't think healthy players like to take incentive-laden contracts to that end. As we head into the break, I want to bring up 3 comments about Pete and about his health. One from Frank about sports, Frank from Mets Weekly, saying Stanton's sculpted stature has been a bad thing for aging, which is a good point. And then I want to bring up these 2 because these 2 individuals have been fair and critical about Pete as a Met. One is one of Frank's co-hosts, Carson, who says Pete is built like a linebacker, maybe a linebacker that likes carbs a little bit much, but he's a house that barely has interior issues. Carson has been critical of Pete while also acknowledging what Pete kind of deserves and what Pete's importance is to the Mets. So this is a very fair comment. And Keith, the media goon, says the fact that Pete looks the way he does is why he doesn't break down, bringing up another sculpted baseball player, Noah Syndergaard, with all of his injuries after he went crazy working out. So I think those are all good points with regards to Pete's body type and what Pete has been able to do over the course of his career in terms of staying healthy. That said, we are going to continue the Pete dialogue as it relates to some other stuff, things we talked about last week, maybe Vlad Guerrero Jr. on the horizon for next year, maybe Alex Bregman, some of that stuff coming along, not instead of Pete, but with Pete Alonso. So with that all being said, we're going to head into the break. If this is your first time watching the show and you're like, what the hell? I do not want to sit through a break. Don't worry. It is just a 30-second timeout that we need to reset the conversation and to plug in some ads for the audio version of the show. But right now, you are watching Til Mets Do Us Part live on YouTube, live on Twitter, all courtesy of the Brella Sports Network. It's John Saponaro. It's Matt Ibanez, and we will be right back. Yo, just like that, we are back with more Til Mets Do Us Part live on YouTube, live on Twitter. John Saponaro, Matt Ibanez talking about Sean Manaea in the first half, deciding to return to the New York Mets on a very team-friendly and I think below market value deal. Both sides wanted to get it done, and they got it done. We're done talking about Sean Manaea for the most part during this particular episode, but if you want to hear about it, if you're just joining us now, well, don't fret, because you can listen to the replay of this show because it exists in perpetuity on our YouTube channel, appropriately called Til Mets Do Us Part. As soon as we are done with the live broadcast, you can also listen to this show as an audio podcast because it drops pretty much the next day on all of the platforms that you know and love: Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, all of those places and more. Right now, we are talking about Pete Alonso, what his potential future with the Mets may look like, and what the fallout might be if he does not return to the New York Mets, or if he returns on a deal that has opt-outs or a one-year deal, any kind of commitment, if the Mets would look ahead to a player like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to join the team next year. But before we talk about any of that, Ibby, let's talk about a quick word from our friends over at Independent Safes.
Absolutely, John. IndependentSafes.com. Independent Safes is protecting homes and businesses with secure residential and commercial safes. Fireproof peace of mind in every corner. Visit IndependentSafes.com today for security that stands strong. And as always, we love putting people into those safes in case they're bothering us. You know, Gary Sheffield Jr. can go into one of those safes because I don't need to hear his opinions about my Metsies because he doesn't know anything because he's not paying attention. So I don't need to listen to him. So we can put him into one of those safes, throw it into the river, throw away the key.
Put that Nepo baby.
Yeah. Into
in
the
an
safe.
independent safe. Guy thinks he's got better takes than us because of what his name is. Nah, put him in a safe.
Don't need it. But one more thing I want to do before we get back to the conversation. We have 833 people here right now, which is awesome across both platforms. We have 88 on the YouTube side, only 36 likes so far. We always like to try to get to 50. So if you're here watching the show, make sure you hit the like. Once you hit the like, make sure you hit the sub as well. Because when you hit the sub, you can then enter yourself into the giveaway that we're doing during this live, which is going to be a signed Edwin Diaz ball, certified JSA. We want to make sure we get that in there. We keep it real here on Til Mets Do Us Part. So make sure you sub the channel and then put something into the comments so I can make sure that you're here. And I'm adding people as the show's going on. When it comes to the wheel spin, I'll share the screen, more towards the end of the show. We'll spin the wheel and then we'll find out who's going to be getting this awesome giveaway. But again, make sure you sub the channel and put something into the chat so I can add you to the list.
Yeah, no, very well said. And we do have some new commenters, or some new-ish commenters, somebody who was here maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, people joining into the fray, and we appreciate all you guys. It's the first time we're ever doing a live giveaway, and part of the reason why we're doing it live is the nature of the subscribers on YouTube. We set out to have a goal of 1,000 subscribers, and thanks to all of you, we hit that goal, but we can't put each and every single person's info into a randomizer because some people have private YouTube accounts, as is their right, but then you cannot find them in order to include them. So we thought the best way to do it was to allow folks to comment here, and the only way you can comment is if you're subscribed, and we can do it live on the show. We thought that would be the fairest way to reward somebody with that Edwin Diaz autographed baseball. And what a time to do it, Ibby, just a couple of days before Christmas, as we are 4 subscribers away from 1,100. Shout out to, I think this is Trumaquin. Mets are the new kings. Truman Quinn. Oh, yeah, there you go. I can't read, obviously. I got to get my prescription fixed. I wanted it to be Trauma Quinn. It's Truman Quinn. Truman Quinn says the Mets are the new kings of New York. And I believe Truman is a first-time commenter, automatically now entered into the Edwin Diaz giveaway. There is not much more time, because we're going to give it away before the show is over. So we are getting their comments in now. Those are the ones, they're automatically entered.
They are. And just so no one puts any jokes real quick, I am going to step away for 1 second. I have to do something with my daughter really quickly. So I'm going to walk away for 1 second. It's not the Wi-Fi. Don't worry. John's going to have you for about, a couple of minutes. I will be right back. That's it.
I'm just going to put on the intro video, and I'm just going to let it play till Ibby comes back. Could you imagine if I just put a video on repeat? It's like a substitute teacher. Ibby leaves, and I'm like, all right, you guys just here, watch the first 45 minutes of the first Harry Potter film.
I will be right back.
Go ahead. That's what happens sometimes. Look, real life gets in the way. It's the holiday season. Ibby's got 2 great kids. So sometimes he's got to jump out and do his thing. But I'm here with you. I'm going to take you guys through not the rest of the show, but this portion of the show. I just saw, yes, that baseball is sick. Brad, you don't have to worry about it because you are officially entered, as is everybody else who is a subscriber and commenter on this show. Yes, Stephanie. So if I comment, you are locked in. You've already been counted. Don't worry. Stephen Mack doesn't buy it. He says Ibby is restarting his router. I appreciate the joke, but I can confirm that Ibby is not restarting his router because as admin of this show, as Ibby is as well, I can see that his feed is still currently going strong. So he did not have to restart his router. Not in this instance, but he does have to do it often. And yeah, shout out to Brad saying, go be a dad. Of course, you've got to do that when you can and when you have to. So I'm going to jump back into the comments here really quick. Couple good ones. Carson saying, to be fair, Syndergaard was just a flammable Barbie doll, but Keith is right about the fact that it did not help him stay healthy. Stevie Mack saying, Pete flips over his truck while driving to build up more strength. Yes, I think we talked about that last week, maybe it was the week before, where Alonso, didn't even miss like a practice when he rolled his truck over and almost died when they were at spring training. So that's something that you really have to take into account. Pete is a tough son of a bitch. Say what you want about him, whether you love the way that, his game is, whether you hate the way his game is, whatever. Look, it is absolutely, he is a tough guy. John Connolly, who might be a new commenter here to the show. Welcome, John. Alonso should be signed to a 3-year incentive-laden kind of deal. We were talking about that before we went into the break. That's possible, but I think Pete's looking for a little bit more in terms of guarantees when he gets to 34, 35, 36 years old. He doesn't want to sign these 1-year deals along the way. So I think if you can give him a highly like Ibby said, if you can give him something that incentivizes him to sign a deal where you give him a signing bonus where he winds up playing for, let's say, $55 million this year because it's 25 or 27 million in AAV and then another 20 something million in a signing bonus, you kind of allow him to have the best of both worlds. And then at the end of that deal, you're not paying for it tremendously. I also suggested you could give him a deal a la the Carlos Correa deal, which is heavily front-loaded over the first 4 years. And then after that, it's escalators. There's vesting options that he needs to hit. I think that's less likely, but I think that is something that is possible as well. Look, I just think that at this point, it's Pete Alonso to the Mets or bust. I don't want to have the conversation without Ibby coming back about Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Alex Bregman being tangential to that, because that's really, I think, the best way to kind of close out the rest of this show, because I think that is the fallout of Pete Alonso, is what happens next or what happens if. So don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about Bregman. A lot of rumors swirling about Alex Bregman. And we're going to talk about Vlad Guerrero Jr. I've been starring comments like crazy with regards to both of those. Keith saying, at 2,000 subscriptions, Ibby gets a new router. I think, Keith, he's going to have to get a new router before that. It feels to me like that's something that Ibby's going to have to do eventually. He records in his basement, and maybe that's part of the problem. Got to get the router closer. Maybe he's got to get a second router working to bounce that signal along. But either way, Ibby does need a stronger signal, but like I said, he did just step away to be a dad for a moment. This is not one of those instances. Shout out to Nick R here on Twitter, and then saying, nah, actually, now I'm here. So appreciate you there. Maureen, to answer your question, if you win, we do not deliver the ball personally to Arkansas, but we will put it in the mail. We'll make sure that it's packaged nicely. We will send it out. It will be safe. It will be secure. And when I say we, I mean Ibby. He'll do that. It is not personally in my possession. He's got the autographed Edwin Diaz baseball, so I don't know why he would send it out to me in Los Angeles to send it out to you in Arkansas. I think Ibby's about to be back. Yes, he is. Maybe a couple jokes, but most people saying, hey, you know what? You got to go be a dad and make sure that you are doing your thing.
The hardest thing, just the reason why I went away, giving medicine to a toddler is like a wrestling match. I'm telling you right now, I'm a little winded because it's not the easiest of tasks to get accomplished, but That's what I was doing. So, did I miss anything good? Well, what's the conversation? What are we getting back into?
You know what? I wanted to, we just kind of talked a little bit. Actually, what I did was this. Charlie said, good vamping, John. I just filled some time. No, talked a little bit about Pete and filled some people in along the way and said, hey, when Ibby gets back, we'll talk about the fallout of Alonso, either going the Vlad direction or the Alex Bregman direction. I didn't want to have that conversation without you here because I think that's important. I do want to throw you a couple names, though, of some folks who were here in the chat while you were gone. Cowboys for Life. I don't know if you saw that individual. Haba Brayu.
Got that one.
Truman Quinn. We talked about that. But then John Connolly.
Got John Connolly.
You saw
James. I'm looking now. Yeah.
James Pavia.
I got to put that one now. Okay. James Pavia. Okay.
And then Nick R jumped over from Twitter to YouTube to make
Appreciate you, Nick. Appreciate you, Nick. Doing a smart man.
And then the man simply known as Dan.
Oh, all right, Dan. I got you, Dan.
I don't know much about Dan. He says, yo, yo, yo. I say, yo, 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 right back. But Dan is in the house. So that's all the folks that I think you missed with regards to the giveaway.
Beautiful.
Keith saying Ibby's daughter hit him with a steel chair.
So, it felt like
possibly. Stephanie saying, hope she feels better soon. And shout out to the girl dads. I agree. Shout out to the girl dads as well. Ibby. Okay. Let's get back into this conversation really with earnest. Okay. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is, to me, only a possibility if the Mets don't sign Pete or sign him to some deal where he can opt out, or sign him to some deal where they have an option, which is way less likely. You know, Mike Steele going back earlier said, I'd rather them be in on Vlad, but I understand getting Pete back. We talked about the merits of bringing in Vlad Guerrero Jr. next year with Manny Gomez last week when he joined us, covers the Mets for NJ Advance, the Star Ledger, NJ.com, talking about how Juan Soto loved the Red Sox growing up and loved Manny Ramirez and Big Papi Ortiz together. And could you see them doing that with the Mets, a new version of that, Soto and Vlad Guerrero Jr.? He made it very enticing. But I don't want to talk about Vlad Guerrero Jr. right now. I want to talk about all this smoke about Alex Bregman going to the Mets. This has been a rumor that has been floated by a lot of different sources, some we know to be pretty credible sources. It's been a lot of smoke. Bregman is a Stearns player. He is a guy who's got some pop, who plays a lot of good defense, who brings some offensive versatility, current Gold Glover at third base. There's a lot of stuff that Bregman does that is likable for a guy like Stearns. But he's got a qualifying offer. He's looking for a 7-8 year contract, probably in the $200 million range. What do you make of this Alex Bregman to the Mets situation? Do you think it's possible? Do you think it's likely? Do you think it's real? And a lot of people saying, what if they get Pete and Bregman? A lot of comments to that end.
I'll bring up Brad's comment real quick here, just saying how Bregman's market is dwindling as well. And look, I think a lot of this is starting to favor the Mets when it comes to the money that they have and the willingness that David Stearns has to go in terms of contract. So I am starting to really buy into this smoke. And again, it could just be like the best version of smoke that we've ever seen. But the more I'm looking and the more I read from certain people and how things are written, I really think that I don't think it's one or the other. I refuse to think that they would let Pete go and take on Bregman because it's not the same in terms of production when it comes to power. I've heard a lot of people say that Bregman is a better all-around ball player than Pete. And I would have a hard time disagreeing with that because Bregman is a much better fielder and he puts up respectable numbers.
At a harder position.
Right. And it's not the power numbers that Pete puts up, and I understand it. So, Pete tops him in that sense. And the Mets need power in this lineup, especially behind someone like Soto. You want it to be Vientos, but having more than just Vientos would be great. So I'm buying this because of what I just said before. I think that this team, especially now that they got Manaea at 75 in comparison to what people thought he was going to be $90, maybe $100 million. You're saving money there. You got the deferrals as well, what have you. There's money to spend. There's a good chunk of change left to spend.
Yeah, shout out to Carson, who has been keeping a running total of the Mets payroll commitments. He's been scouring the internet, going to Sport Tech and all those places, and he's been sharing it both on Twitter publicly, but also in our creator group chat. And Ibby, based on the numbers right now, including Manaea, the Mets are still about $50 million in current payroll commitments at this moment, under where they were at the end of last season. That is a very significant amount of money. Pete Alonso, Alex Bregman fit very nicely into that $50 million that you still have available theoretically. And then you add to the fact that the Mets are, they could spend beyond that money if they wanted to, because you look at some of that money from last year being dead money. You also look at the fact that things get more expensive every year. And so maybe they're saying, hey, what we had last year was a lot of dead money on the books. And we also acknowledge that you have to spend beyond that. So, the Mets' viability to sign another offensive player, two other offensive players of significance, and then continue to build on this roster is very possible. People are going to say, how could they? Easily.
I really think that this is about, the more and more I was looking at it, and it's about the defensive alignment, and it's about bettering the defense. And I think that's a big reason as to why a player like Bregman is interesting to someone like Stearns, because he does everything. And also, I know this falls on some deaf ears because everyone's like, you want production, you don't care. But Alex Bregman's been a part of some winning teams. He's been a big part of those teams. And I understand people are worried about the offense and what it can do. But, I know the Crawford boxes are something that comes into people's mind. I'm not sitting here telling you that the guy would come here at 35 home runs. I do have a fear that the guy would come here and he would hit 12 home runs and just be an overpaid third baseman. But at the same time, when you look at expected home runs, and look, that's not everything. The previous 3 years, if Bregman played at City, he would have had 22, 25, and 26 home runs. Respectable numbers in general to go along with the defense that he provides would be nice. And the big thing is people say that he's part of, loaded lineups. Well, if you ask me, if you sign Pete Alonso and Alex Bregman, and you have a lineup that consists of Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Mark Vientos, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, Alex Bregman, Francisco Alvarez, and then
that's a loaded lineup.
You have have the back end of maybe Acuna and McNeil, and then Siri and Taylor, potentially Gilbert. Like, I'm sorry, like that is a loaded 1 through 7 lineup that a guy can go in and just do his thing. So it's very interesting, and I'm taking it at the value of this is not one or the other. I think because look, I still think that there could be potential of the driving of the price down for Pete. That was my stance the entire time when it came to the Bregman spoke. But now that there's no market, I can't buy that anymore because there's no reason to drive it down because it's gone. It's evaporated. So I think when it comes to Bregman, there's two teams that he could go to besides the Mets. Okay. I don't think he's going to the Yankees. I don't think they're going to pay him. I don't think that he's going to the Red Sox. That was one team that a lot of people were pushing for, and he makes sense there because you can then shift Devers, what have you. But I don't think that they're going to spend the money. I think John Henry is cheaping out. I think he wants to play the, we tried game. The only other team is Detroit, reuniting with AJ Hinch. That makes sense. They're a young team. He can be the vet. He can be the guy that can show these kids how to play. They made the playoffs. Let's learn how to win type of thing. And him being the connection with Hinch kind of helps. But I still question if they'll spend the big money. And I don't think he's going to get the 7 or 8 years.
They also got burned on Javi Baez.
They did. And I don't think they're going to spend. I don't think Bregman's getting 7, 8 years. I remember I think it was Mike Silva who does the Talking Mets podcast, and he was saying how Bregman's going to be getting a contract that starts with at least a 2. And I responded to him. This was weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago. I said, Mike, I'd be shocked if this guy gets a contract that starts with a 2. Like, I don't think that's happening because I don't think anyone's going to give him that based off of the years that he's had and how he could potentially project moving forward. And if he's going to talk about, willingness to play second base, second basemen don't get paid that kind of money. So I don't know what people think he's going to get this huge contract. I don't think he's going to. I think that there's a world, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think there's a world where the Mets could land both Alonso and Bregman for a combined total between the two contracts of less than $300 million. I really do.
I think that
it's possible. I think it's possible. I do.
That would be a huge win for Stearns. If Stearns could get those two players, I don't care, Ibby, if it's $1 less than $300 million. If he can get them for less than $300 million, that's impressive. Even if it's 299, I'm just making up numbers here.
No, yeah,
because I think you're right. I don't know that it's gonna happen, but I think it's possible. I think there's an avenue, and I just want to be clear on my thoughts here with Alex Bregman. I've spent a lot of the offseason saying I don't want Bregman. That's because I want the Mets to bring back Alonso. My thought was always Bregman does not replace Alonso. You have to be very clear on that. He is not the same offensive type of player. So me sitting here saying, I don't want Bregman, don't give me Bregman, it was always as the Alonso replacement. I don't want to move Vientos off third to acquire Bregman to say that, okay, that replaces Alonso, because then you have to move Vientos and you have to say, Vientos, go learn a new position. Also, live up to what you did last year. Also live up to the departing numbers of Pete Alonso. Sure, you have good protection in the lineup with Bregman in that case and Juan Soto, obviously. But I don't love that as a concept. If you're telling me that the Mets can bring in both of them, now you're playing with Steve Cohen's money. Now you're having that Yankees 2009 offseason that me and Aunt Rivera from Subway to Shea have talked about all offseason long, where they go out and they get all of these players. And I'm with you, Patty. I don't want to move Vientos either. I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth on this. And there was another comment I starred earlier from Carlos Ortiz saying, I think signing Bregman might throw off Vientos. And that's why Ibby and I had this conversation offline that I took online to Twitter, where I said, there's a world where you could sign Bregman and let him play second base, even though he did just win a Gold Glove at third, even though Vientos is not the superior third baseman right now. He is the younger player, Ibby. And then what you said was spot on. Late in the innings, you move Bregman back to third. You bring in a guy like Acuna to play second base. And suddenly, now you've got everything that you're looking for in terms of offense, in terms of defense, in terms of putting a great team out on the field every night. So my issue with Bregman was Bregman as a frontline premier player, jewel of the offense player. He's not that. But if you're talking about a team that has Lindor and Soto and Vientos and Alonso back and Nimmo and Bregman, you can sign me up for that. It's the same way that Manny Gomez talked me into the concept of maybe waiting this thing out at first base with Vlad Guerrero Jr. But a huge difference a week later, simply because my pivot was always, if you're not going to be in on Pete and you're going to let him go sign somewhere else, well, then you've got to get Carlos Santana on a one-year deal. The market is dried up everywhere else for Pete. And also now, Ibby, for the Mets. The Mets can't go anywhere else and get a first baseman. Pete Alonso can't go many other places and get the deal he can probably get from the Mets. So I love Vlad Guerrero Jr. as an option. He helps you extend the window. You now have him and Soto potentially, at 26, 27 years old for the next decade. I get why that makes sense, but that doesn't help you in 2025. You do have to take the long view, but I am starting to be in on the concept of bringing back Alonso, which I always wanted to do, and bringing in Bregman, which I did not want to do. And shout out to Keefe from Shea and Sons. Because Keith from Shea and Sons has been saying, Ibby, for how many weeks? Alonso and Bregman, Alonso and Bregman, Alonso and Bregman. If you don't follow Keith, you don't follow Shea and Sons, you should, because he's been saying that forever. And I got to give him his credit, because it looks like, I'm not saying it's likely, but it looks very possible right now. And I am not going to be mad at an offense that includes those two players with the players we already have. You're muted.
I'm going to sorry about that. I'm going to piggyback that off of, actually, before I even say that, I keep on laughing at the comments real quick, mainly because everyone, instead of saying Bregman, everyone keeps on calling him Bergman. I think it's funny. Like how
I think it's an autocorrect thing.
Just like the Wilsons with the Wilpons. We hate the Wilsons. People are questioning Bergman.
Yeah, every time I type it, it autocorrects to like Brennan, because it just thinks like that's the name. But anyway, yeah.
Now I lost my spot. What were we saying? We were talking about
I was saying just how I was sold on adding.
On
Bregman under the concept of adding him to Alonso plus what we already have.
Look at the team. Look at the team as from the pitching side and what he's doing from a depth perspective. He's adding a lot to the overall depth. Imagine the depth that you're adding to the offense if you get both of these bats. It pushes a lot of people down in terms of where they would bat in the lineup, the construction you can have, the defensive possibilities. You have a lot of flexibility. I know people are like, oh, where's so-and-so going to play? What's this? What's that? And we talked about it. And it's like, look, there's a thing. There's days where you can have Bregman at third. There's days where Vientos could be your DH. There's days where Bregman might be at second. There's days where there might be defensive switches where Bregman's at second to start, and then he moves to third, then Acuna comes in. Like, there's a lot of things that can happen. I know people are afraid of overall change when it comes to the potential development of a player. And I understand that we've talked about this, how it's not the easiest thing just to be a DH. And maybe it's not the smartest thing to do to a kid that's 25, just make him a DH, as opposed to not being able to, run out and be on the field and then take that and then go to the plate. Like it's a different animal being just a DH. So I understand those concerns, but at the same time, your job as a GM, as a POBO, as a person who's in charge of a baseball team is to accumulate talent and construct it and make it work. There's an opportunity here to do that and add depth to this lineup that this team hasn't seen since 2006? If we're being honest here, from a top to bottom standpoint of an overall lineup, like if that happens.
2006 is the best Mets lineup of my lifetime. Certainly of my fandom lifetime. Because technically I was alive for the 86 team, but I didn't see the 86 team play. So I can't count that being, a person watching baseball. So if you say I was born in 86, my baseball fandom, I was such a baseball fan early because of my family, like 1990, 1991, I was watching games as like a baby with my grandfather, but starting to understand baseball as like a 10, 11-year-old. So let's say you get to 96, which is where my my sports fandom really started with the Mets and the Jets. From 1996 on, the Mets in 2006, Ibby, are easily the best lineup of my life, of my fandom life. So, and look, that team got friggin' far. And I think that's how you need to look to build a team, because now you're competing with the lineup that Atlanta has. Look how deep that is. You're competing with the lineup Philadelphia has. I know some of those players are older, but look how deep it is. And you're competing with the lineup that the Dodgers have. And I know their lineup is maybe a little bit more top heavy, but they're the Dodgers. And so they know how to churn out people to fill out the rest of a lineup. And look, I don't want to poo-poo what the crosstown team did either. Look, you don't really have to compete with them until a potential World Series. And the Yankees have brought in some players with some warts on them, but they still have Aaron Judge. They've got Giancarlo Stanton with all the pop. Now they have Cody Bellinger, who's got, I think he'll have a little bit of a resurgence there with the short porch. They've got a player like Jazz Chisholm. Like, the Yankees have some players. So you got to have a deep lineup. And I think right now the Mets have a very good lineup, Ibby. But man, Bregman and Alonso makes it so much deeper. And look, there are some comments here to the contrary. Like, Johnny Boy saying, I don't want Bregman, bring back Pete and bring back Iglesias. The OMG Mets must still live. We all love the OMG Mets. But if you're giving me a choice between Iglesias and Bregman and Ibby, I don't even care if it's Iglesias on a 1-year, $10 million deal or Bregman on a 6-year, $140 million deal. I'm signing Bregman. Bregman.
Yeah.
With all the money and all the years tacked on, because the difference is significant. And we all love what Iglesias brought, but sometimes you got to move on.
Yeah, I think I was kind of alluding to this when we had J-Mac on and saying how what he established as, the rally cry and the sign and everything, and we'll never forget OMG. But when you look at how things have gone this offseason so far, yes, some pieces come back, but some guys go. Like the guy who always held the sign was Luis Severino, and he's gone. Like he's not here anymore. Like Manaea was a big part of it, so you bring him back, and I get it. But they're like, you bring in a player like Juan Soto, it's like it's about evolving. It's about making, you might love a certain chapter of a book, but you got to move to the next chapter. It's like there's something new. Like the story's going to continue. It's going to progress. Like what is next? And I think that this team is trying to evolve from the fun group. And yes, they still want to have vibes and they want to be a fun team on the field, but I think it's time for the next step. And I'm not saying that I'm going to throw Jose Iglesias into the trash. It's like nothing like that. It's just, I appreciate everything that he did. And granted, he gave you his 90th percentile while he was here as a career renaissance, if you will. But is that going to happen again? Probably not. Do I want him on the team? Sure. I think he'd be great to have because anyone likes a vet like that on a team, especially when you're trying to win. But yeah, if you're telling me I have to choose between certain things, like you're going to choose a player like the stature of Alex Bregman. All the love for OMG and everything that happened with it. And my kids still love the song. They won't let me let go of it because they want to keep on singing it and playing it. But at some point, like it's time to move forward also. And like, let's aspire for more. Let's get more. Let's get further.
I could not agree more. Let's jump back into the comments here. Because there's a lot with this Bregman conversation. First one I'm going to bring up really quickly. Carlos Ortiz saying, is Stearns willing to sign someone with a qualifying offer? Obviously, besides Soto. Soto's so good. They already did it, but Soto's so good. You don't care about the draft pick compensation. You don't care about all that other stuff. I was hesitant to sign a second qualifying offer player to this team because you'd give up basically $1 million in international bonus pool money and you would lose 4 draft picks. And those are two things that Stearns likes to do. But Ibby, you hope that some of those players become a player like Alex Bregman, right? You hope that that's the lottery ticket, right? You hope that they become that good. In a vacuum, I don't know if Bregman is good enough to give up another 2 picks and all the qualifying offer forfeitures that go along with it. But as a complementary finishing piece to an offense, I do think it changes the math a little bit. I don't know if you agree on that. Like the qualifying offer being a factor, to me, I'd rather give up the picks knowing that we already signed Soto, knowing that we already signed Pete back, then I'm willing to give up the picks for a guy like Bregman as opposed to him being the cornerstone piece.
Yeah, I think one thing I want to say real quick, our high point previously was 1,206 people. We have crushed that so far. We're at 1,222 right now and climbing. So shout out to all of you that are with us on Twitter as well as YouTube. Make sure you sub the channel and leave a comment so you can join the Edwin Diaz sign ball giveaway, which we'll be doing at the end of this stream. But when it comes to the qualifier, I wish I can give credit to the person who said this because it was spot on. And I never thought of it this way. And it made me really think. It started turning me into, the whole idea of Bregman being a possibility, even though he has the QO attached to him. And that was, if you're going to do something like this, yes, it would suck because you're giving away more picks. You're giving away international money. But the point that the person made was, it's one off season. Yeah. Like that's it. Like if you're going to do this, do it all at once. So you're not constantly losing things from your drafts or your international money for like X amount of years. Like if you're going to do it, stack it and then say, screw it. Like this is the 1 year, we'll throw it. And then moving forward, we'll be a lot more careful because we think that this is going to help this team become something in the short term or in the long term, depending on what player it is. And we will take care of this after that, after that given year, and then we will restock and recoup and then go from there. Like I heard that. I was like, man, I never thought of it in that sense. It's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That does. And that's why I'm leaning more towards this whole entire idea being a possibility, because stack everything instead, as opposed to chipping away at it every season instead.
Also of note, the free agent class next year, notoriously not great. And I think this is where you can look at the Vlad thing, right? If Vlad goes to free agency, and there's no guarantee because Toronto has a lot of money to spend and it might be burning a hole in their pocket. They tried to get Ohtani. It didn't work. They tried to get Soto. It didn't work. Maybe their pivot is, hey, Vlad Guerrero Jr., you're our guy. Here's a bunch of money you literally cannot refuse. Likely, I don't know. Possible, definitely. But if he gets the free agency, Ibby, you're going to be battling out other teams. Now, because Juan Soto is here, the Mets are officially a destination. The Mets have two of the best players in baseball with Lindor and Juan Soto, period, full stop. But you are competing with a lot of other teams for the jewel of that offseason. If you go and you do this thing now, which is retain Alonso for, let's say, 5 years, get Bregman for, let's say, 6 years. You've already got Soto locked up. You've already got Lindor locked up. You've already got Nimmo locked up. You have controllable assets with Vientos and Alvarez. It's not crazy. You've already built yourself into a position where you can succeed in spades moving forward. And this is, I want to bring up this couple comments here really quick. DMAC, who I think might be new or new-ish to the show. Shout out DMAC. What term on Bregman do you have to sign? If he says yes, to 6 years, you have to go for it. Problem is, how long is the Bregman contract? And then later said 6 years for Bregman sounds good, which is why I just kind of pulled that number up. If you can get Alonso for 5 and Bregman for 6, I'm doing that deal. And then he's joking about he would do $4 million a year for Iglesias, but you got to throw in Pitbull. You need Pitbull to get that
I do
deal
enjoy
done.
the remix. I do enjoy the remix. I do.
Ibby, let me say this. Shout out to Hob for saying my Bregman prediction is not far-fetched now. I don't mind taking a defensive player with some pop. I just bring that up from earlier because shout out for predicting that and been riding with that for the last couple of weeks. But everything that we're talking about, you, me, the commenters, we're debating this. I understand merits from both sides. I think the best, most succinct way to pitch Bregman with Alonso, not Bregman instead of Alonso, Bregman and Alonso. I'm just going to bring up this projected lineup from Henry DeVale. Lindor, Bregman, Soto, Alonso, Vientos, Nimmo, Alvarez, Siri, Acuna / McNeil. Now, I don't know if Soto wants to bat second. Whatever. Let's just assume that's the lineup. And you could say Siri / Tyrone Taylor. Holy hell, look at that lineup.
That's telling you.
Great.
It's more and more I look at it is a lineup that would automatic, and we talked about this a lot during the early half of this offseason, where we're like, you got to remember when it comes to offenses that you're going up against, and you're going up against the likes of the Dodgers, and the Phils have a very stacked lineup, even though, yes, our team beat them, but still a very older lineup, but still one you have to fear. The Padres can hit the shit out of the ball. The Braves are going to be healthy, and they still have Ronald Acuna and Austin Riley and Matt Olson and Ozzie Albies. And it's like these guys can hit. You got to be able to hit. So when you say this, it's like it's not that far-fetched. It's really not. And the more and more you think about it, it makes sense. I'm not sitting there telling you it's going to happen. Because maybe Detroit does open up the wallet and they say, screw it, we want Bregman, they're going to pay him and give him the contract that he wants, give him $200 million. Maybe that's the case. But I'm telling you, I really think we are in a world where Alonso and Bregman can be had, both of them. Total money between the two. I don't know the years total, but total money between the two would be less than $300 million. I really think that's where this could go. I do.
There's also something to look at with this potential lineup here. You could, because I see in the comments, a lot of people are saying this, right? Like Bregman pays second, Vientos should DH. No, Pete would DH. No, this person would DH. You're all right. Because what you could do with this lineup, Ibby, is you could rest guys. Lindor, yeah, he's playing most of the time at shortstop. But don't you think he would be a more productive player if now you have a viable option in Luis Angel Acuna, or maybe even in a pinch, Alex Bregman, to play a little bit of shortstop? Couple days. I'm not talking about 30 games. I'm talking about 5 games for the year. You could DH Lindor, and you could have Acuna go play shortstop. You could also DH Vientos some of the time. And maybe Vientos goes and plays first base and Pete DHs. Maybe Vientos plays third base and Bregman DHs. Maybe Bregman is playing second base and Vientos is playing third. And you can move these things around. And yes, that's what I'm trying to say, Carlos Ortiz, rotating DH. The Mets need 2 more bats, I think.
They do. They
need Alonso, and then they need somebody else. Why? And look, I would have been fine. It said reports that the Mets were in on Jock Peterson until he signed with the Rangers, I believe.
Yeah.
If the Mets signed Alonso and Jock Peterson, and Peterson is your full-time DH and Alonso is your full-time first baseman, okay, fine. But you know what's better than that? A player who's better than Jock Peterson on both sides of the ball in Alex Bregman. You don't have to lock down your DH position if you can move guys around the field. And yes, new commenter right here. I think that's Rekia. Let me know if I'm saying that right in the comments if you're still here, Rekia. Vientos,
if you don't say it right, they're gonna wreck you.
Vientos' best defensive asset is his arm. Moving him to first makes that pointless, which is why I wouldn't move him to first. But allowing him to play some first while allowing Pete to DH to stay fresher makes sense. Allowing Vientos to play third base and then moving Bregman to second base, allowing that to happen keeps everybody fresh. Maybe Vientos DHs some, plays first base some, Bregman plays some third, Bregman plays some second, Lindor plays mostly shortstop, but maybe 5 games you get him off his feet, 8 games you get him off his feet, Acuna plays shortstop. Ibby, I like it. I do. Here's the one downside. Bregman and Alonso, you close down a path for prospects to move up.
Is it a downside though? Is it a downside though, D-Mac? Mainly because like this opens up opportunities for you to better yourself elsewhere. Like we've been saying that there's a glut when it comes to the talent that we have, but then that's when you buy your time, and then when when it strikes, when your opportunity strikes, you make a deal for an arm, for a starter, for a pen guy, like whatever it is that you need. Because in the end, we want good players. We want great players. You want proven players. You want guys that can provide something here that can help this team win, because that's what we want to do. So I'm never going to say don't take somebody or don't sign somebody because of, what if? Unless it's a player that I have like extremely strong conviction about. And to be honest, I don't have that much that strong of a conviction when it comes to the guys that we have in our system, where it's like, oh, don't get this guy because we have this guy. It's like, I don't have that. Like, I don't. Like, I like Jet Williams. I do. I know more than a lot of people, but I think he could be something. But at the same time, if you're telling me, look, we're going to do this and Alex Bregman's going to be playing second base for the next 5 years, I'm like, okay. Like, I think top end, because essentially what you're saying is what you're hoping, because everyone always like the unfair comp for players is always what do they look like and how tall. Like, they're going to take their size and what they look like, and they're going to say, oh, this player is going to be like this guy. It's like, oh, Jet Williams is this tall, he's going to be like Dustin Pedroia, or he could be like Alex Bregman. And it's like, well, if there's the potential of not being that, wouldn't I take the guy that is what you're saying he might be? Like, that guy is available. Like, can I have that guy? Because he's still pretty good. But like I'm not worried about the whole blocking thing, because like I said before, it gives you a lot more ammo then. Like, your entire cupboard is open if you are going into the deadline then to say, we can better ourselves and get something that we need. And look, injuries happen, things happen in a given season. Sometimes you might have to make a move that's going to keep you on the same trajectory that you want, and you're going to have to deal someone, and you're going to have every opportunity to deal someone to better yourself in any situation.
I completely agree. I do. Look, there's always the downside, the upside. There's always the downside, the upside to all of these guys. But I'm not a prospect hugger. I understand that you need them, but if you have the opportunity to go get a proven commodity, you can go and get that proven commodity and you don't apologize for it. This one is interesting, Ibby. Well, first from Corey saying that's why these younger guys are all working at more than one position in the minors. I think that is totally, absolutely true. But this one with Carlos Ortiz, the window, this current window, and I talked a lot about the window of the Mets franchise. The window gets blown wide open when you sign Soto because Soto is great now, but he's 26. He's a part of the current window, but he's also a part of the future window that includes the younger players. You hope Vientos and Alvarez, and whether pick your flavor, Jet Williams, Luis Angel Acuna, Ronnie Mauricio. You hope some of these guys, Carson Benj, are in that mix as well in the second half of Juan Soto's career and the latter half of Juan Soto's contract. But Ibby, I like this window comment because it's really the next 6 years. 6 years is when Brandon Nimmo's contract expires. He signed an 8-year deal 2 years ago. If you can get Pete and Bregman for 6 years or less, I think that is perfect because it does not force you to pigeonhole or shoehorn older guys on a younger team. So I think that's the kind of thing that you're looking for here. Carlos says 5 years. I would even push that to 6 simply because it lines up with the expiry of Brandon Nimmo's deal. Then after that, you're looking at having a, still in his prime, but latter stages of his prime Juan Soto. And you've got the remainder of Francisco Lindor's contract where he's going to be an older player. He is your sage player. So I think, Ibby, 5 years would be great, and I'd sign either one of them to a 5-year deal right now, but I would even push it to 6, and I wouldn't feel bad about it because that's where this window, this current window with this current group of prime players resides. So if you want to go ahead and give me Bregman and Pete to add to that, I'm totally on board with it. And so is Paul DeWise, who I believe is a new commenter. Welcome to the show, saying, Carlos, dead on. What do you think about that? You're muted again.
Apologies. I've been going back and forth, adding more people to the list because we're getting so many brand new people and this wheel keeps on filling up. What was it? What was the comment that you were talking about just right there?
The 5-year window.
Oh, yeah.
The current Mets core. Yeah. And I said you could even push it to 6 to line it up with Nimmo.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. And I'm telling you, if you look at the potential when it comes to these players that we're talking about and the years that we're talking about, I'm trying to think. What if you said if it was 6 years? Because again, I don't think Bregman's getting $200 million. If I said 6 years, 170, 6 years, 170 for Bregman. 4, maybe 5 years for Pete at 115, 120. It's 290. It's where I said it was. It matches up with all the windows that you're talking about. They're trying to win with said players. Look, I might be off when it comes to money. I will pat myself on the back because I've been kind of spot on when it comes to money so far. So I think that is something that is possible unless someone swoops in that we're not hearing about. It's going to give more. But I think you're living in a world where that's the money that they're going to end up taking unless they go the opt-out route to try to hit the market again next year. But again, you play that age game. I don't think it's going to end well for guys like that. I think it's already coming into question for both of them. So you have to talk about these windows, and we talked about windows last week as well. It's you're trying to win within certain ones and then expand upon the others. Getting players like this definitely adds to the window of the guys that are here, but at the same time, it still helps you maximize the prime years of Soto. And it's not as if they're contracts that are going to really bog you down. So it makes a lot of sense. 100%. Yeah, I agree with the whole working within that given window. Yeah.
Well, and look, and I think that's my logic. Chaz, and I see you saying, if you keep, he said a lot of stuff. They've said a lot of stuff along the way, but this is the most recent comment saying, if you keep signing older players to fill positions, you'll never see the talent in the minor leagues. Plus, we'll not get a chance to see these young players and this young talent. That is fair. And baseball has trended in a direction where young athletic players are important. But the Mets have young athletic players already on their current roster. Now, they're not the craziest athletes. No one is going to confuse Mark Vientos for, Ellie De La Cruz in terms of athleticism. But we're talking about young players. Vientos is a young, talented athlete. Alvarez is a young, talented athlete. If he's not traded, and I don't think he will be, Luis Angel Acuna is a young, talented athlete. He is sort of a poor man's Ellie De La Cruz, for lack of a better way to put it. He's not the same type of player, but just bear with the analogy for a moment. The thing is, when you go out and you sign Juan Soto, you cast a die at that moment that solidifies where you're at and what you're trying to do. Now, it doesn't mean that you ignore the future. It doesn't mean that you mortgage the future. But this sustainable winning, Ibby, that the Mets are trying to build does involve plenty of younger players. It needs to. But to have sustainable winning, you have to start the winning. And the Mets did a lot to start that winning process in 2024, adding Alex Bregman, bringing back Pete Alonso, to Juan Soto, to Lindor, to Nimmo, and to the younger talent that's here puts you closer to that, not further away. And that's why I don't think, Chaz, and I don't think you're wrong, but I just think you have to be realistic about what you're looking at. The winning's got to start, Ibby. Everybody said the biggest criticism all these Yankee fans and all these Mets detractors said is, sign Soto, but now you got to go win. Yeah, you do.
Yeah. And the other thing that I'll bring up, and shout out to the brand new high for us of 1,302 people here, 1,302 people. Shout out to all of you. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Love you. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can join in on the Edwin Diaz ball giveaway that we're going to be doing shortly. The one thing that we're talking about when it comes to windows also is, let's remember how long David Stearns has been here. Okay. He's been here for a year.
A minute.
How many people do we really have under the guise of David Stearns in terms of this farm system that he's attached to? Carson Bench, a couple of guys, the pitcher from Duke, his name's escaping me, but not a lot of guys. I'm not saying that players are not good from previous regimes. Our best guy right now for many is Brandon Sproat, that was drafted by another regime. So I'm not trying to say that the guys that we have are garbage. It's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, usually when it comes to building a brand new outlook and development for your system, you're looking at maybe 4, 5, 6 years to really build things up. So we're talking about building something up and churning talent, which you can do. And if you're having older players for the time being, you would then be able to churn out all the players that David Stearns is under the stewardship of the Mets, who he's drafted and he's helped develop over that entire time. So when it's time to move guys in, you could do it relatively simple because they're the guys that he wanted for this team. That's just an outlook that I'm looking at as well when we're talking about blocking and not playing kids. But look, I'm all about supplementing talent. We've talked about that because you can't have $30 million players at every position. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
So you have to have youth. This team does have youth sprinkled in at the moment. You're looking at third base. You're looking at catcher. You're looking at potentially second base, depending on what happens here with Bregman.
Right.
You're looking at center field. Like, there are places where youth is going to be sprinkled in, where you're allowed to spend money elsewhere and have a veteran type of player or a win now player. So I wouldn't get too bogged down on it. And remember, like we always say, trust in David Stearns.
Absolutely. And just to address this, because we do have to get out of here eventually, although this has been a wild amount of fun. High water mark was over 300 live viewers, and we appreciate all of you, especially here on a holiday week. I know not everybody celebrates the same things and not everybody celebrates the same way, but this is still a holiday week, and so many folks are tuned in with us, locked in with us. We're going to give away that Edwin Diaz ball in a couple moments and then get out of here for the week, come back next Monday, which is a couple days earlier than we normally record. If you're new to the show, this podcast is once once a week, typically Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. But with Christmas being this Wednesday, New Year's Day being next Wednesday, coming to you live Monday for the next 2 weeks, and then back to our regularly scheduled program. But Douglas Barnes says, even after signing Soto, Stearns says he wants a path for the young talent to play. Chazin also saying Stearns has already alluded to this many times to that same point. Yes, I know. Yes, I agree. But also, just for us, me and Ibby keeping it consistent, we've talked about the potential of getting out from bad contracts, Jeff McNeil, Starling Marte, to allow these younger players to play. And look, I'd love for both of those players to be off of this team right now. I don't know if that's going to happen. Marte 1 year left on the deal. McNeil 2 more years left on the deal. But because you've signed bad deals in the past under a previous regime, it should not shy you away from signing deals now. Now, yes, you want to avoid signing bad deals, of course. But again, Bregman or Alonso at 6 years and under are not necessarily bad deals. These are not guys that you're paying till they're 40. They're guys you're paying till they're 35, 36, if you can get them on the right deal. Hell, if you can get Alonso on the right deal, you can maybe pay him till he's 34. So don't let the sins of past GMs dictate how you feel about some of this stuff moving forward. And again, we're only talking about this with regards to Bregman because there continues to be smoke, and where there is smoke, there might just be fire. So, Ibby, look, the comment section is wild right now. A lot of stuff going on. I don't know if we can stay. I don't know if we can stay in this forever. We do eventually have to give out. We do have to do the giveaway, and we do have to leave. And you have to go be with your kids, and I've got to go eat dinner and all this stuff. I do want to bring up this one.
Hold on, one second. I have to bring something up real quick. I appreciate that, Joe, but we'll bring it back up. I have to. I'm going to ask something right now because I have to. I see Metcast is here right now. Shout out to you guys. One podcast another. What is up, Metcast? I am very curious if you are still here. I am very curious because you have me blocked on Twitter, and I have no idea why.
It's probably because of me.
It might be because of you, but I'm just very curious as to why I'm blocked, because a lot of times people like tag me and like giveaway stuff, and I'm like, I can't see whatever this is, and I found out that Metcast blocked me, and I don't know what I did to you, Metcast, but sorry if I did anything, but I'm clueless, as you can see here, but happy holidays. But I had to ask that.
It's 100% because of me, guaranteed. Anyway,
because you're an a-hole.
Yeah, I know. This one from I don't know how to pronounce this first
Joa.
name. Joa. Thank
Joa.
you. Somebody you know, or just
no,
better than me?
If I'm misspeaking, I apologize, but I usually have students with that spelling like that. So
okay. Well, if you're still here, let us know if Ibby got it right. Joa says, good podcast, but please lose the god awful intro. I appreciate the kind words. We love the intro. It ain't going anywhere for a long time.
Yeah,
I know
we
some
love
folks
Zeps.
don't like rap
Zeps
music.
did a great job for us. Yeah.
Zeps is a friend. Zeps is a good artist. Ruse Beats, crushing it with it's everything we wanted. Ibby and I have similar music tastes, although not identical. I'm sure we have similar tastes in that regard. We both love the song. Eventually, I'm sure we'll rebrand it. But yeah, like Stephanie saying love the intro. Brad saying intro is a must. Like we love it. It ain't going anywhere, but we appreciate the kind words. Michael Segriff saying this is an excellent stream. I came in late, but we'll rewatch. Ibby, do we need? Oh man, we got another new one. We got Herv in the house.
I'm trying to add these people last second.
I know. I think we need to get this giveaway done. Brad saying intro leaves, I'm leaving. All right, Ibby, we got 1,317 live eyes on us at the moment.
Woo!
New high water mark for the show. Shout out to all you folks. Herb saying love the intro. I love Charlie, man. Charlie bringing the heat all the time. Charlie is one of the best fans of sports. I'm 72. Love the intro. Saying screw it. So look, we got a lot of folks here. I think we should do the giveaway. Our threshold, by the way, if you're new to the show, Corey Holster just got in. D is here. S-Man is in the house. Our threshold for this is we wanted to have 1,000 subscribers, and it was a long process to get to 1,000.
It was.
We said when we get to 1,000, not a moment sooner, we will give away an Edwin Diaz autographed baseball. And then last week, we had hit the 1,000 mark a couple days before the show. Ibby and I, always transparent on this show, have to be transparent. We were like, okay, we stumbled upon an issue. The giveaways we've done in the past have always been Twitter follows or Instagram follows, stuff like that. Different thresholds where you could take everybody who follows you on Twitter, you put their name into a randomizer, and the algorithm picks somebody completely at random. It was perfect. Once we started to try to apply that to YouTube, we realized that some people have private YouTube accounts. Even though they are subscribers, we don't have access to their name. We don't have access to everything that they're trying. We don't have access to their account, right? To say, hey, put all of these people into a randomizer. So we said, we're going to do something we've never done before, which is do it for all of the subscribers that are in the live chat, live on the show. It was the most fair way to do it. So Ibby has worked tirelessly over the last 2 hours, putting his mic on mute and entering in every single person who has joined in the live chat into a random wheel so that here on Festivus, during the season of giving, we could give away that Edwin Diaz autographed baseball and its certificate of authenticity. So Ibby, I think we should go ahead and give it away. What do you say?
All right, let me just double check, make sure I got all the names that are here right now before I pull this screen up. I will pull up the comment that Metcast brought up as well, saying that a few people run our account. I'll unblock you now. Merry Christmas, fellas. Love the live. Thank you, Metcast. Whichever person you are that is running said account, if it's the one who usually does the YouTube stuff, shout out to you, brother. Keep doing what you're doing. But yeah, I was always curious about the block, so I saw you jump in and I had to ask. No ill will whatsoever. I think this will be all right, let me add these last two here. Let me add these last two just to be fair. I can't say the names, so I don't know how to Slit Dragon 7.
That would be Silent Dragon.
Oh, I can't. My eyes are going
Silent Dragon.
Silent Dragon. And then there was one more that came, Michael King.
But if you're going to be fair, you got to add Sharon McLean because she's now in that.
I had Sharon McLean from before.
Oh,
I had her from before.
Okay.
I did.
All right.
I did.
That is it. It's closed.
Here we go. That's
we have
it.
to stop it eventually.
It's it. That's it. Here we go.
Somebody's about to win an Edwin Diaz baseball before Christmas. Let's see who it is.
Let us share my screen.
I'm taking the banner down.
I'm sharing the screen. I'm bringing up the wheel. Do we see the wheel?
We see the wheel.
We see the wheel. Okay. Okay.
It's kind of, there you go. There you go. That's what we want to see. All the
It's
names
good?
on a
You
random. No, scroll it down a little bit more. A little bit more. Nope, the other way.
Oh, you want to see
There
all
you
these?
Yeah, no, I want to see the wheel in full.
Oh, okay.
Like
I had
that. There we go.
Yeah, I had a button that was able to make it larger. I don't know why it's not working right now. But let me see here. Just before I do it,
There's so many names. If I went to a carnival and there were this many things on a wheel, I don't think I could ever spin it. It would make me go blind.
Okay, I'm going to spin. Obviously, if you make your screens bigger, you can see it a lot better. And then I'll read the name once the spin is done. I chose the colors, as some have already said in the comments, the Grimace and City Connect colors. Yes, I went with the purple because I figured this year was very purple driven and Grimace and all that went on with our New York Mets. So it felt proper and just for this to be the color. I'm going to spin this wheel. Shout out to the 1,300 of you that were here. 1,310 of our high watermark. Appreciate and care and love all of you for joining us on this journey as we've already eclipsed 1,100 subs and climbing. This giveaway is for you. We held true to our word, and someone is about to win a JSA certified Edwin Diaz signed baseball. It is time to spin the wheel. Death in Spades 5. Death in Spades 5 is our winner. If Death 5.
in Spades 5. I had a bunch of starred comments from Death in Spades 5 earlier. We didn't get to them.
Is he here? Did he leave? I don't know if Death in Spades 5 is here.
I don't know, but all you had to do to enter was to be in the chat. So we got to hit up Death in Spades 5. He's here.
He's here?
He or she is here. Death in Spades 5.
Death in Spades 5.
You guys are awesome. Congratulations. I do love, hang on a second. Where was it? It's Chris Torres. It was like, damn, I was close. It froze on a couple names.
Oh.
As it's like, bloop, bloop.
Death in Spades. Death in Spades. If you are still here, let me take this screen down so we can actually talk now. Death in Spades 5. Do you have a Twitter? Are you on Twitter? You can just DM me to give me your info. If you don't have Twitter, you can send an email to us at tilmetsdouspart@gmail.com if you don't. But some way, just let me know the best way for communication so we can actually get your info and I can send this out to you.
Yeah, listen, man, shout out to Death in Spades saying thank you so much. You guys rock. We appreciate that very much.
You joined us.
We appreciate all you guys. And look, this has been a long stream, but it's been a fun stream.
Yes, great.
Death in Spades saying, I am on Twitter. I'll DM you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Sorted. Guys, this is not the only we do a couple giveaways a year because you guys, quite frankly, deserve it. So, we're going to do another one. I did tease one, Ibby. I'm not going to say what it is on this show. Maybe next week, maybe the week after. We are going to do another one soon. This is going to be from my personal collection because the Edwin Diaz ball was from your personal collection and you should not have to give away everything yourself. So I'm going to give away something from my personal collection sooner rather than later. We do a couple giveaways a year. We're going to do it because I wish we could give everybody something for rocking with us, for making this show so great. I mean, I cannot believe the amount of people that have been in this show today, over the last couple weeks, over the last couple months. And to echo something that Ibby always says, we started this show. It was just me and him, and we would do it as a podcast. We decided to go live. There was no one in the live stream. Then we decided to go live and be like 4 or 5 people, and that was great. We appreciate those 4 or 5 people who are still here, by the way. But man, to get that number to up over 1,300 people, where we have to sit here and we try to highlight these comments and we try to make sure we get to as many as we can. Absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Appreciate you guys very, 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 very much. Don't worry, Death in Spades. We got you, saying that they're not verified, so they won't let you DM. It's okay. Drop your Twitter handle.
Yeah, just send me a tweet.
Send a tweet at Ibby. We'll get it sorted. Ibby, it's been a great show. I know we're going to do one next week, so this is not the year-end one, so I won't get super sappy about all of that. But, man, what a fun show this week.
This was an unbelievable show. I am so thankful to everyone that has joined us, and we've already hit 1,118 subscribers now. So we had a big jump towards the end, which I figured would happen once people realized we were about to do the spin. But like we said, like we'll do more stuff and we'll do more wheel spins because clearly the demand is there now, which is awesome. And I think it was Brad before who said it in the comments, and Brad's been with us for a while now. He said that, this chat's really starting to fill up with some new names. And it's a beautiful thing to see. And I couldn't agree more. It's like, I just have so much fun coming on here and just interacting with everyone and, having a good time and talking Mets. And it's the holiday season. I appreciate the fact that so many people took time out of their busy schedules to sit down with us for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, for a half hour, or even the entire time because they wanted to make sure that they were here to see the ball being given away, signed by Edwin Diaz. Either way, awesome. Appreciate all of you. Nothing but love. Happy holidays to everyone. Merry Christmas. Happy Festivus. Whatever it is, happy Hanukkah. Whatever it is that you celebrate, have fun with your families. Enjoy the time off, as John said before. And we will be back next week, earlier than usual. We'll shoot for that Monday again. And hopefully we can end the season, end the year, I should say, on a very high note with some more people and probably make some more new friends. So thank you so much. And as always, LGM.
Yeah, I can't add much to it. I'll just reiterate a little bit of what I said before, which is, this is a time of year where a lot of stuff slows down. So I don't care what you believe in. I don't care what you celebrate. I don't care what you want to do, as long as you're not hurting anybody else. If you are fortunate enough to have the kind of job that gives you a little bit of a break during this time, and I know not everybody has that. I've been in that position. I know what it's like. For some people, this is the busiest time of their year. For some people, they don't get these kinds of breaks. They have unconventional schedules, which again, I completely sympathize with. I've been in those positions, but for a lot of folks, this is the time where you can completely slow down, and you should enjoy the time by yourself, enjoy the time with your friends, your family, your pets. I don't care what it is. Make sure that you take this time to take care of yourself and enjoy yourself. And just have a good time. And honestly, yeah, I'd be remiss. I can't believe we forgot about this, Ibby, but RIP to Ricky Henderson, the Man of Steel, one of the best to ever put on spikes, former Met. Incredible player. That guy would steal, I don't know, 250 bases a season if he played right now, probably with the current rules. Guy was absolutely incredible. Too young, 65 years old. Absolutely.
Way too young.
Way too young. Don't want to end on a somber note, but certainly want to, give a person their flowers. Celebrate.
Rest in power. Rest in power, Ricky.
Absolutely. And like Ibby said, more than likely we will be with you on Monday next week because of the continued holiday season. But the best way to know is to subscribe to the show and turn those notifications on. I'm John Saponaro. That's Matt Ibby Ibanez. This is Til Mets Do Us Part. We will see you next week, live on Twitter, live on YouTube, all courtesy of the Brella Sports Network. Till then,